everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So the deal with this video is, I know I said in my last video that I was planning on releasing a mid-series review for The Wheel of Time since I just finished book 7 a few days ago. I planned on recording sort of a review, just like my thoughts on the series after being halfway done with it, but as I started to outline and try to come up with some sort of way to organize the review, I was like, this video is going to be like 2 hours long. So instead of giving you guys a mid-series review, I am just going to make a very short, my thoughts on the series so far, my biggest pros, my biggest cons. But before I do that, I am going to give you guys my top 10 favorite moments from The Wheel of Time so far after having read the first 7 books. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off at number 10, we have the scene where Egwene was raised to the Amerlin seat. This is my number 10 because I thought it was a cool scene. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed how Egwene was raised to the Amerlin seat. I actually predicted that she was going to be raised to the Amerlin seat at some point, although I didn't think it was going to happen as soon as it did. And I loved the scene where this happened. I thought it was brilliantly done. I thought it was very interesting and did a very good job of setting up how little power Egwene was going to have even after she, among the rebels, is given this incredibly powerful position. We see that a lot throughout book 7. After she's raised, we see that she, even though she is the Amerlin seat, she has to struggle for every single bit of power that she is given. And it's very interesting. I really enjoyed the scene. I really enjoy all the implications of this. And I am so looking forward to seeing more of Egwene as the Amerlin seat. And I'm curious to see if she will end up in the actual White Tower at some point. I suspect she will. Prediction number 9 is the battle that took place at Two Rivers that Perrin and Faile were a part of. This was the big battle with the Trollocs, and while it still made the list, it is pretty low down on the list because to me, even though it was a great scene and it did a great job of displaying Perrin's growth as a character, I absolutely love Perrin as a character. He's one of my favorites. And honestly, some of Faile's growth as well, and just all this stuff with the Two Rivers that had been going on, it felt like such a typical fantasy battle scene. So while I loved the scene as a whole, the execution of the scene wasn't necessarily my favorite. Aside from that though, I don't really have a whole lot to say about the scene. It's pretty self-explanatory. It makes sense why it's a great scene, even if it's not necessarily my favorite. Like I said, it is pretty low down on the list. But without further ado, let's move on to number 8. I am going to get progressively more and more excited about these scenes as I move up the list, so prepare for my explanations to start getting a lot longer. Coming in at number 8, we have Mat defeating Couladin, the sort of chief of the Shido. So I know this isn't an actual scene in the book. We are never actually given a scene showing us what it was like from Mat's head to defeat Couladin. But even without that, I still count this as being a scene in the book. It happened, and this was in my mind, a major turning point for Mat's character, where I feel like he almost starts to accept the fact that he is ta'veren and that he is going to get sucked into these battles and roped into these things. And him defeating Couladin instead of Rand, I thought that Rand was going to be the one to defeat him, but for Mat to do it, I thought was a brilliant choice on Jordan's part. This scene was sort of a turning point for Mat's character in that I feel like after this, he started to accept this respect that men were giving him and this leadership that had been placed upon him, because I almost feel like he starts to feel as though he deserves it. And he does, especially with all these memories that he was given from all these like past generals and leaders, and I really love this moment as a turning point for Mat's character. Moment number 7 is yet another Mat moment, and I think it's the last Mat moment on this list. I love Mat as a character. He's great comedic relief. He's a funny guy. He's incredibly interesting, has an amazing skill set. He is just not one of my favorite characters. He is not the type of character I like to read, but he is very well done, and he is a great character. That being said, The 7th scene on this list is sort of like a combined Matt and Rand scene, actually, but is Matt blowing the horn of Valier in sort of the battle at Tomon's Head. So this is a fantastic scene for multiple reasons. This was actually probably, when I finished with book 2, would have been my number 1. After reading all of book 1 and 2, this was my favorite scene from book 1 and 2 combined. I mean, just the way that it was done, the way that Jordan wrote it was so masterful, incorporating viewpoints from all of the different characters, not to mention this sort of battle in the sky that literally takes place while the armies of Arthur Hawking, or however you say his name, are battling, like, the armies of the Shan-Chan and the Shadow, and just the way that it is written is so masterful. I will go ahead and say, like, the battle in the sky thing was a bit much. It was a bit cheesy. Wasn't sure how much I liked it, but aside from that, this was a fantastic scene. I loved the sort of development almost it gave for Rand, and this was one of the first times I felt like Matt's character sort of was a little bit more special, finally had his own moment, which was when he blew the horn of Valier. Moving on to moment number 6, we have when Nynaeve defeated Moghedien for the first time. Nynaeve has been probably my second favorite character very consistently since the first book, next to only Moraine, and this moment for her really, again, like a lot of these other moments, was a huge turning point for her character. This felt like the moment when Nynaeve realized how truly powerful she was. This is also the moment where I felt like Nynaeve's block is going to have to go at some point in order for Jordan to progress her character, because for her to have all this power but to only be able to use it when she's angry is an interesting way to limit it in the beginning, but I felt like that was going to have to go at some point. And we see in book 7 that it actually did. Again, I don't have a ton to say about this scene, but just the way that it displays how powerful Nynaeve is. This is also one of the first looks that we get at Moghedien as a character, and it shows how truly flawed she is. Moghedien is actually one of my favorite of the Forsaken so far because she's just so bad at what she does. It's kind of funny, but for Nynaeve to defeat Moghedien in this way was very fun to watch, very well done, and I love how she literally, I mean, I might be remembering this wrong, but she literally just threw something at Moghedien to break her concentration, and I think that is hilarious. I loved that moment. Moving up to number 5, we are officially in the top half of my favorite moments of the Wheel of Time series so far, and for number 5, we have Rand revealing the secrets of Rudion. I'm probably saying that wrong. Let me check to make sure I'm saying that right. Yes, it's Rudion. This moment happened at the very end of book 4, for anyone who doesn't remember, and it was sort of this climactic moment where Rand truly proves to all the Aiel chiefs that he is in fact the true Karakarn. Because there was him and Couladin who both had the dragons along their forearm and on their hand, and this is the moment that truly proves that Rand went to Rand went into the city and he saw what all the other chiefs saw, and that he was in fact the true Karakarn and not Couladin. Of course, the Shido still don't believe him, and they go on to make problems for them later on in the series. But in this moment, you also, Lanfear is revealed to be hiding among a caravan of dark friends, and so is Asmodean. This sort of leads into this whole Rand and Lanfear and Asmodean interaction, and it's very interesting, and Rand does stuff with skimming and gateways, and he discovers more magical items that I'm sure will have impact later in the books. And we also learn some more about Lanfear's character here. I believe that Asmodean called her by her real name, and rather than Lanfear, and she nearly killed him. It was a very interesting scene. We got a lot of character development for Rand, and we got a lot of character development for Lanfear as well. This is one of the moments where we see for the first time that Rand truly is starting to get the hang of things. He is seeing stuff that's going on, he is making plans, he is reacting to stuff well, which he doesn't always react to things well. Rand is a very reactionary person, and he reacts very well to the situation. He knew that Lanfear and Asmodee were hiding in this caravan. He knew it was a caravan of dark friends, but he managed to hold off until the right moment to reveal them and reveal this whole thing that was going on. And I love the character development that happens for Rand in this scene. On to moment number 4. We have the massive scene at the end of book 3. I just wrote this down as the whole face-off at the Stone of Tyr. There were many amazing aspects to this scene. Aspects from Rand, aspects from Moiraine, Mat, Nynaeve, Elaine, Egwene. We have Mat going to free the girls who had kind of already freed themselves. We have Moiraine defeating Belal, I think is his name. And then Rand defeating the fire-eyed Forsaken. I forget what his name is, but I think it was determined that he was just a Forsaken who had gone insane. We have Rand drawing Kalendor, the sword that is not a sword, which amusingly enough, I was watching a Daniel Green video, and he mentioned how Rand stabbed someone with the sword, so doesn't that kind of make it the sword that is not a sword, but it's also still kind of a sword because you can stab people with it? Jordan does a great job of these climactic final scenes in his books where you get all this viewpoint from all these different characters. It's almost similar to a Sanderlanche, I would say. And the one in book 3 is just absolutely spectacular. I love this moment at the Stone of Tyr. I love that it just sort of solidifies for us. Rand is the Dragon Reborn. That is the character that he is going to play for the rest of the series. All in all, it is just an amazing moment. This also solidifies Moiraine as an incredibly powerful character, as she literally kills one of the Forsaken. And she is she's a strong Aes Sedai, but she is not even the strongest Aes Sedai. And yet she rocks up into the Stone of Tyr and just one of the Forsaken. I hope I'm not making it too obvious that Moiraine is my favorite character. Anyhow, now we are into my top 3 favorite scenes from the first 7 books. And coming in at number 3, we have when Nynaeve learns how to heal someone who has been stilled or gentled. I feel like for a lot of people this scene wouldn't be so high up on the list, but for me, part of the reason this is so high up is because it was so unexpected. I felt like there was definitely foreshadowing for this scene, but I did not pick up on it at all. And just this moment where it just clicked. Even as I'm reading it, I didn't realize that Nynaeve was about to successfully heal Logain, and I was just shocked. And I felt shocked right along with the characters when Nynaeve, she just slams a shield over Logain and is like, holy cow, what did I just do? She is so shocked and stunned, and it kind of ticks off all the Aes Sedai and the Yellow Aja, which I appreciate because the Aes Sedai aren't always very nice to Elaine and Nynaeve and the other accepted. It just annoys me just the way the hierarchy works, and it's stupid, and I love it that Nynaeve as an accepted just straight up heals stilling, something that nobody has ever found out how to do before, because she has this amazing ability to heal that has been set up in previous books. And of course after this she goes and she heals Swan and Leanne, which is a nice scene as well, even though they don't regain back the level of power that they had before. They're still, their rank as Aes Sedai is reinstated. And it is just, I love this scene. I love the development it gives for Nynaeve. And more than anything, I love the development it gives to the world and the plot and all the implications that come of this. That wait, stilling and gentling can be healed. Now I want to know, does Logain have less power than he used to have? Just Swan and Leanne have less power? If a man assists in healing someone who's been stilled or gentled, can they give a woman back the full power she used to have? Because it seemed like Nynaeve gave Logain back his full level of power. So I'm really interested to see where this goes. And I adored this scene so much. Coming in at number 2, I suspect this scene would be very high on most people's list from books 1 through 7. But it is the first time we ever see the Ashamen in battle. This scene was horrifying. It sent chills down my spine. I loved it. It was wonderful, terrifying, brilliant. It was fantastic. This is the scene in the book at the very end of Lord of Chaos. Lord of Chaos so far has been my favorite book, despite its many shortcomings. The ending of this book absolutely blew me out of the water. This display of power from the Ashaman and the men of the Black Tower that we see is just absolutely incredible. It is also absolutely disgusting. They are literally just like dismembering people with this power because Rand told Taim, I believe is his name, that was like, I want you to teach these men to be soldiers. Like, I want you to teach them to kill. And I love this sort of complete opposite that they represent to the White Tower. Like the White Tower, we have these women who take the 3 oaths, like not to lie, not to harm people. And then we have the Ashaman, whose purpose is just to cause destruction, to protect the Dragon Reborn, to be these soldiers. And I love the whole black and white and the being complete opposites from each other. And it is so interesting. And this scene feels like to me such a major turning point, and a turning point in power of the series, that we see the Ashaman. I believe we can officially say the Black Tower is more powerful than the White Tower. The White Tower is divided, the White Tower is held back by these oaths, and the Ashaman have no such limitations. They are absolutely terrifying, and to add on to that, they're all gonna go insane at some point. I mean, think about what Rand has done here. The implications are just insane. And I loved this scene and this turning point that it created. Absolutely brilliant, absolutely brilliantly executed and written by Jordan, and I loved it. Before I get into my number one scene, I am going to say all of my honorable mentions. I have 3 honorable mentions of scenes that, while I loved them, they didn't necessarily make the top 10 list. First one of the honorable mentions is when Rand kills Ravine in the dream world with some help from like Nynaeve and Moghedien. It was an interesting scene. I liked it. It was one of those climax things that Jordan did. It just wasn't my favorite with the way it was executed. It felt like Rand being kind of reckless and foolish, and while it was a good scene, it just wasn't good enough to make the top 10. Next up, I kind of just threw this in here for fun, but literally any time that Moiraine uses Balefire, I think it is the most hilarious thing ever, because the Aes Sedai are always telling Rand, don't use Balefire. Moiraine is always telling Rand, don't use Balefire. And what does she do anytime she encounters a Forsaken or a Darkhound? She straight up uses Balefire, and then she gets mad at Rand for doing it in the same circumstances. And I think it's so funny and so hypocritical and such a Moiraine thing to do, to be like, do as I say but not as I do. And lastly, we have the scene where Nynaeve broke her block on channeling. This was a good scene. I felt like it was fairly well done. It wasn't the best done. I felt like it could have been drawn out a little bit longer and explained more, like why Nynaeve felt the need to surrender in this moment. But again, I love this scene. Nynaeve is one of my favorite characters, so for her to finally break her block on channeling and hit this sort of like level up moment, I really enjoy that. This is also the moment she reunites with Lan, which was really funny, because like as soon as she sees that Lan is there, instead of thinking, oh my gosh, it's Lan, like, oh, I'm so happy to see them, she goes, ah, frick, I'm soaking wet. And then she like dries herself off with the power. I just thought it was kind of funny. And finally, the moment you all have been waiting for, the moment that some of you have probably seen coming, but coming in at number 1 for my favorite scene out of all of the first 7 books is Kneel or You Will Be Knelt. This is such an incredibly powerful scene, both character-wise, plot-wise, dynamics between Rand and the Aes Sedai. Oh boy, let's unpack this. So this is a scene at the very end of book 6, after we've seen this display from the Ashaman. The Shaido have been scattered and defeated. Rand has been rescued from the clutches of this group of Aes Sedai that are trying to tote him back to the White Tower so that Elaida can essentially put a leash on him and like control his followers. And there are other Aes Sedai there, not just the Aes Sedai from the tower, but there are also rebel Aes Sedai and just other Aes Sedai that are there. And they're like, it's almost like they expect something from Rand afterwards, and he is so upset. He straight up turns to all of them and tells them to kneel before him, to give him an oath, or he will force them to kneel, essentially. And he forces all of these Aes Sedai to swear an oath of fealty to him, essentially binding them to him and causing them to have to do anything that he says lest they be labeled a dark friend. It says time and time again, like, only a dark friend would break the oaths that they took to Rand. And just the shift in power that this shows, shifting largely towards Rand, is incredible. It shows the Black Tower is more powerful than the White Tower. It shows that Rand now has this hold over the Aes Sedai. It shows Rand's growing superiority complex and his not necessarily desire for control, but almost need for it. It shows Rand is becoming a much more powerful leader. He's becoming much more confident, and he straight up is just done with Aes Sedai and their bullcrap. He already was getting to a point earlier, we see this a lot with Moraine, and it shows that Rand is just, he's done with the Aes Sedai, he's done with their crap. He's like, submit to me or I will force you to submit. But yeah, on that happy note, that is going to be it for my top 10 favorite moments from the Wheel of Time books 1 through 7. As I said earlier, I will be releasing a part 2 to this video once I am done with book 14, detailing my favorite moments from the entire series, but just for now, I thought that this would be a fun sort of substitute to a mid-series review, since a mid-series review would take me way too long because I have way too many thoughts. But anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment down below, tell me which one of these moments is your favorite. Did you have a moment from the first 7 books? Please keep it from the first 7 books that you would have put on this list. Would you switch something out of my honorable mentions? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to keep up with what I'm reading, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Radiant Reviews, and I will see you all in the next video.